Yeah, Chris, I was just thinking about you reading this Strasser article.
Oh, because I'm a Strasserite?
Yeah, I mean, wasn't going to say it.
No. Okay. Disclaimer. That's what I studied in college.
You have to give a disclaimer.
Yeah. But as everybody knows, it's merely the fact that you know about it means that you're more susceptible to it.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
People who study fascism just become fascists and so on.
Well, it's kind of like if you've never heard about the story of the gospel, are you damned? If you don't know about Jesus? This was a question I had as a child. Those people way off that have yet to be encountered by colonialists. As far as they know, their cosmology is the only one. Once they are introduced to the truth of the gospel, then they can be damned.
Yeah. Yeah, that means that the best thing that Western missionaries could do when it comes to uncontacted tribes is stay away.
Yeah. The universalism of isolation. No, it's pretty interesting stuff. I was also, again, this might be a question to get to excise, but what is the framework of our conversation today? Like,
exactly.
it seems to be more about populist. I mean, it involves the left, right? But it's not necessarily about socialism, non-Marxist socialism per se. It involves that. It's about this big muddy problem of, like, I think populism and socialism and Marxism.
I mean, I would say that that's right. I think this question of like, what is real Marxism, and this the fact that there is this weird conflation of all the different kinds of vaguely let's call it anti-capitalist sentiments. They're all kind of just collapsed into what we call, that this all Marxists are actually, or whatever, all socialists are all kinds of things: idealists, materialists, populists, communists, classical social democrats. It's kind of all blended together into one morass. So that, okay, so I made this outline.
Oh yeah, we should probably look at your outline.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I probably should have done that before I asked that question.
I don't actually know how useful it even is, but I just thought, like, there's a bunch of thoughts I've had. But yeah, that's kind of the first question was, like, how is this really, like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Is this true? And whether that's good or bad, does it matter? Like, what is there to do about it?
With regard to like taking the wrong path historically again and again, but which path was the wrong path? I feel like I'm totally, just by virtue of being on a podcast with you, Jason, and totally Hegel-pilled, and this notion of, like, the wrong path is just like a red herring. But going back to when we were reading that arch Stalinist reformed theology guy, read theology book,
Roland Bohr.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He makes the really great point that, like, it's both within Christianity, as in art, and also in socialism and Marxism. We inherit all of it. We inherit the betrayals, but it's deeper than betrayal, right? There's no, like, recovering some pre-betrayal doctrine that can lead us back to the pure path.
Yeah. I actually think that is one of the most important, one of the most important points to make and to continually reassert, because I feel like,
are we recording now? Is this part of the episode?
Yeah. Yeah, let's just call it recording.
Or woodshedding.
Okay, so hello and welcome to the Regrettable Century. This week we are talking about, Jason, why don't you tell us and then continue with your point?
So formally, nominally, this episode was titled "Non-Marxist Socialisms."
Right.
And I guess
What
it's
does that
kind of
mean, or does it mean anything?
yeah. What does it mean? Does it mean anything? Does it matter? Is there anything to do about it? This is kind of it's kind of inspired by, in part by Varn and Tut's book, which I think is a really, really good position. It's like they kind of mark out a part of this discussion, even though obviously we have disagreements on various things. But it really does. It really kind of sheds light on a question which I think is not being asked enough. It's actually a whole series of questions, but one of them is, well, like, why does nearly all of socialism today think of itself as Marxist? And again, does that matter?
I don't know that it does, but I mean, there's a whole this sort of mushy left that has an attachment to socialism that is certainly eschews that designation and has for a long time used explicitly saying I'm not Marxist to gain sort of entry into a larger consensus of like common sense politics or whatever. And then you have the DSA that's kind of straddling it, like redefining what that even means, emphasizing the democratic side of socialism ideologically. But I'm not sure that, especially post 91, that we are. I suppose it's just like a implied.
Actually, you're right. That's probably a better way to frame that, which is like, is that the case? Because that's maybe my experience, but that might not be really quite accurate. I might be having a too telescoped of a view of things.
I would surmise it's the case with all Trotskyist, Leninist, Maoist, etc. Things that are historically Marxist, but like the DSA, for example, they have everybody, right? Would you call Michael Harrington a Marxist, the founder of DSA? No. I wouldn't.
I mean, but he would.
Well, okay, well that's fair, but I just think that there's just this that some of these articles get to. There's these overlapping tree rings of designations, which is why it's more and more common to hear people say people of our ilk say I don't like the left as a designating term,
right?
For communist or Marxist.
Well, so like Marxist, even like as you mentioned, Trotskyists don't consider Maoists to be Marxists, nor Stalinists to be Marxists. Stalinists don't consider Trotskyists to be Marxists. Different stripes of Stalinists don't consider Maoists to be Marxists, and vice versa. Revisionist Marxists maybe. If they're being generous, they're revisionist Marxists. None of the orthodox Marxists consider to be any derivative of Leninism Marxist. So it's like saying that you're a Marxist isn't much more clarifying than saying you're a leftist, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
I hardly think at this point it's really much more useful than to say that. I'm a, whatever, like a Trotskyist of the, the SWT tradition, the SWP tradition, a Cliffite or a.
I'm a post-council communist, post-left, post-Trotskyist.
Because there are so many modifiers you have to add on to it that I don't think are useful or clarifying at all. It's not like I don't think the ideas of Marx are useful. It's just that because of the way that online discourse has muddled the terms that we use, it's not really clarifying to say that you're a Marxist at all. Like,
yeah.
And in a group like the DSA or in any kind of formation that would be useful at all in the United States, I'm not saying the DSA is, perhaps it has the potential to be, I'm not sure about that. Any kind of formation that would be useful to advancing the working class in the United States, whether or not we designate people as Marxists or non-Marxist socialists or as whatever like stripe of Marxism that they had before coming to this like working class movement, I don't think that would be useful at all.
So you're highlighting like the morass of like sectarian, no true Scotsman
Right.
discourse that's been going on forever, and we can trace back to Lenin's day. We can trace back to Lenin himself, right? That's how he won
honestly,
many a battle.
I do agree, Chris, with what you said about this general characterization, but I don't think that the internet discourse is even primarily responsible. It definitely is it definitely exacerbates things. But honestly, I think Lenin is actually a major contributor to the idea that Marxism is a thing in which there can be a true and a false. The idea of Marxism as a religion, basically, or as a pseudo religion, which isn't, it's not like it's Lenin's invention. He definitely inherits that from Plekhanov, because the Russian Social Democrats were always more of that bent. But before that, like, people called Kautsky the Pope of Marxism, and even in Marx's day, Marx even said, "I'm not a Marxist." Just so we're clear, I'm not.
Just to clarify, my contention is that internet discourse has made the designator Marxist useless.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, not that there hasn't always been this idea of like no true Scotsman Marxism, of true Marxism versus false Marxism or whatever. I just mean that because everybody can just adopt it without actually having to join a group or espouse any doctrines whatsoever. It's just like a designator for their posting style. Then that sort of has made it meaningless. Because I know, like, I think I've mentioned this on the show before. I have a friend who is a self-proclaimed Marxist who wholeheartedly believes in just voting blue no matter who, because it's like the best possible thing that we can do to keep fascism from taking over, right? And I don't see how the guy's politics are any different whatsoever than just Barack Obama's or
Well, he's in good company there with a lot of other long-standing self-espousing Marxists,
Mm-hmm.
and that's their sort of realpolitik framework. I feel like there's the thing that you two are talking about. So there's the history that me and Jason referenced, and then there's the compounding effect of the internet and of social media, which have like done a number on. Yeah, like Chris said, it's just like a meaningless. It's an identity, like any other, so long as it remains ungrounded or unmoored.
It's a little bit more hollow than some of the others. Like, you can know that you are of Portuguese descent. That's definitely, you could say that it's Latino in some way. But Marxist, you can just decide that.
Right. You decide you're Marxist or which is something that I've increasingly become going back to, like, claiming to be a communist. Is like, can I? What am I engaged in of late or ever that that actually deserves that designation? But the other thing I think that is more to the meat of our discussion is like questions around how centrally do you place like working class economic struggle in your conception of Marxism or socialism or even electoralism. And that gets to some of our readings for today. Like, is it enough to explicitly focus on organizing the working class, or do you need some larger national interests to build a coalition strong enough to seize power in whichever way we're talking about, by revolution or parliament or so forth? And that's like why a lot of socialist parties in Europe especially have kind of been experimenting over the past 20 years with reclaiming nationalist discourse from a left perspective, or patriotic discourse, and so forth.
Hey, also, before people come for us, I don't necessarily know if a Portuguese is considered Latino. Portuguese are considered Latino because Latinos are generally people of Hispanic origin, right? And Portugal technically is not, even though they're from the part of the Roman Empire that was Hispania.
Oh, I was just thinking that because they speak a Latin-derived language.
Like Romanians and Italians. So.
Yeah, but I guess
They're
you're
all
right. That's
Latinos. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
a good
Romanians are are Latinos, dude. Like, yeah. Romanians are definitely Latinos, and so are Italians, by the way.
Wait, so Brazil is like
the Spanish crown used to rule Portugal, so
well, also like Brazil makes up half of
the
Latin
Portuguese
America.
crown rules Portugal.
Or
Move on. Sorry, I'm just joking.
Well, actually, okay. I don't know how to settle that question, but
This is just to keep the Portuguese nationalists from being mad at us.
that is a very important thing that we do, is to keep the Portuguese nationalists at bay.
we don't want to alienate our Carnation comrades.
Like, yeah, I don't know if that's the right use of the term, but
no, I mean, I don't think that Portuguese people are considered Latino, but I do think that Brazil is considered part of Latin America. But anyway, that's.
I don't think Spain is considered. Spanish people are Latino.
No, I think that Latino is like derivatives of, not derivatives, descendants of, colonizers in the Western Hemisphere. That
I think it refers to Central and South America primarily.
Yeah.
That's
also North
And North America.
where Mexico is.
Yeah.
Where Mexico, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, right? Those are all
Chicago.
Central America is North America, but whatever, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but Mexico is North America and not Central America. Also, Americans can be Latinos as well. Like if you're from the southwestern United States, you're not Mexican, you're American.
Yeah.
Speaking of identities.
Yeah, speaking of identities and the problematic nature of this, when you're talking about an adopted identity, like just decide, oh, I'm Marxist or I am a leftist, whatever. We made that point a bunch of times. Although I do think it bears repeating, but I also just think that a big part of this confusion is, in fact, the way in which clarity has been achieved over time, like by subsuming and then politically defeating the Lassalleans, the
Right.
socialist movement in Germany became social democratic. Of course, the ideas of Ferdinand Lassalle and his followers didn't go away. They got sublated they got resurrected through the victorious social democratic narrative. The same thing is true when it comes to defeating the revisionists, the Bernsteinians. It's like, oh, we're actually, we're revolutionaries and we're not evolutionary socialists.
Yeah.
But Bernstein's thinking didn't just like stop happening, and neither did the people who agreed with it stop being part of the social democratic milieu. And certainly with the defeat, with the victory, of Bolshevism in 1917, very few people today would consider themselves to be like popular socialists and idealists in the way that the majority of Russian and also Eastern and even Central European socialists did before the communists took over, whether it was in 1917 or 1925 or 1945. And so in some ways, at least for their time, that was like, these were clarifying moments where like, now it's the communists are in power. The communists are the ones who are going to like define how things are done.
Right.
But the messier version of conceptions of how to be a socialist, whether you have like kind of neo-Hussite populism and you call yourself a socialist, like in Czechoslovakia, or pick a country, it doesn't matter. Like the end result of all of this has been, I guess what we are talking about now is the end result being this kind of sublated, formerly distinct, and now it's actually a part of us. This socialism, these socialisms that conceive of themselves as competitors, they're now just part of this one single, let's call it movement. If we're being very generous, I'll call it a movement. So it's no wonder really that it's less clear.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like on the point that you made about like sublating the sort of tendencies that lost out in the arguments, like the way that the Narodniks and the SRs were kind of like immigrated to Czechoslovakia and then became part of the Czech uh, populist socialist movement, and then the Czech populist socialist movement was sublated into the National Front and thus into the Czechoslovak government after 1948. And large parts of that populist movement were the impetus behind the Prague Spring in 1968, which, to me, that was all incredibly interesting. And in as much as those socialist movements were distinct and had their own character, whether or not they still are, or people that claim those designators still are, is sort of an academic question. That's kind of how I feel about a lot of the debates and the articles that we're reading about. It's like this is all just. I mean, I have to push against the tendency that I have to be like, why the fuck does any of this matter? Like, we're so far away from power. We're so far away from having a movement that, like, whether or not we should be allying with these types of socialists versus those types of socialists seems just like an academic question to me. But at the same time, I understand the reason we have these discussions. And that's sort of the whole point of podcasts like ours or whatever.
Well, I was thinking the same thing, Chris. This question of, like, we're reading about moments in which there is a mass politics, there is a world communist movement, there is a government in power that changes the slate for the rest of the world in Russia. And looking to these moments in which we can discover the road not taken feels very strange and bizarre. Like, certainly there are lessons to be learned about the makeup of what we've inherited, which is this, way down the road, whittled down, fragmented piece of animal left in the road, basically, is our movement. But today, how much import do these distinctions have? I suppose Varn and Tud are looking beyond into the horizon to see what could become an issue if a movement is in fact to be built. But I don't know what the parallels are exactly to, say, 1937, or certainly a lot of people made poor choices in history. But is that the
many such cases?
Is that the way to come to terms with the present now? Not to be a presentist, but
I mean, in some ways, the answer, I think, is yes. I think in some ways we have to have a general sense of what has been in order to make sense of what is, and thus to potentially construct what shall be. But I think that the difference there is that some of us might think we have to go back, like we have to get back to the real Marxist tradition. Chris, you remember that John Molyneux book?
Yeah, The Real Marxist Tradition.
Yeah.
Wherein Trotskyism, Stalinism, Maoism were all just the same kind of authoritarian departure from socialism.
Yeah. Well, Alan,
and social democracy, or Trotskyism was social democracy. Whatever.
Whereas Lenin wholly reimagined Marxism and is purely orthodox somehow.
Yeah. Lenin fixed it. So this Marx and Engels, then a whole bunch of revisionists, and then Lenin, and then Trotsky, and then again a whole bunch of revisionists until whatever. Who's the guy?
Tony Cliff.
Well, yeah, but yes, Tony Cliff, but the other one, the Max Shachtman, before he became a hard rightist, not hard rightist, but before he became a supporter of the Vietnam War, an opponent of Soviet Union. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point. Like this mess, this legacy, is something that we're dealing with constantly today. And I think there are different ways to approach how to untangle it. And I think doing it in this setting makes a lot more sense than doing it in a setting where we're talking about, like, hey, how might we stop them from raising the rent because it's too much, or something like that.
But that is in fact what I guess the most visible iterations of socialism are, at least in our country, the DSA. That is what they're doing. They're talking about affordability. And as far as I'm concerned, any momentum whatsoever, whatever is addled within from this, it isn't only like an inherited confusion of all these things we're talking about. It's just reality. It's just the way that the economy has been restructured again and again by the ruling class to evade the winds of the labor movement over and over again to the point of existing in this hellscape. And so, like, what do? Do you look for like the pure agent? Does the working class still exist as it did then?
No.
That's a big question for me thinking about this. Like, we're dealing with a new historical subject that we've yet to fully discover. Socialism has always relied upon a populist messaging and kind of straddling of populist and moral, slogans, including the Bolsheviks. And so, like,
yeah, for sure.
The difference is that the left and socialism and communism had muscle, had institutional power. Whatever we have now, it's better probably than, 1990, but it's not the same. Like, the working class has changed so much.
I think that just to avoid this criticism, yes, the Bolsheviks did have a sort of populist appeal. They very much so anchored their utopian vision in a working class politics.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
as did many of the Popular Front movements that came to power in Europe after World War II, etc.
I mean, that is my.
But those things are not mutually exclusive.
No,
not at all. But
rejoinder. That having the roots of the party and the identity of the party in the proletariat, in the working class, in like the biggest section of the Bolsheviks was in the Vyborg district, the heavy industry part of Petrograd. They were very, very, very clearly a working class party, and the appeal was very much to everyone. And the other thing is, I feel like this is, they weren't the only ones doing it. There was this massive ferment in society was being stoked up by other forces as well. And I think let's say purely like only focus on the working class, only focus on the heavy industry in the cities to the exclusion of others. Like we can see the results of that, because that's all of Western Europe compared to the Bolsheviks. But I do agree that the jettisoning of a proletarian focus in terms of the politics and also just like where you sink your roots, I think that has been detrimental. The propositions of Chantal Mouffe and Ernesto Laclau have been, we've seen the results of that for the last several decades, and it's been bad. Although I don't think that's just because of that. I also think that probably more than anything else, it's because of the over-reliance on liberal democratic structures, as like, this is how you get or lose power, is whether you win or lose an election, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's been a horrible for not just the working class today, but it's been horrible for us going all the way back. That's why the German Social Democrats have become what they've become, because they never did adjust with the times. They've always, they've adjusted with the times, but maybe in the wrong direction.
Yeah, like just being the austerity regime.
Yeah. So I guess maybe it's not really so much true that all of socialism calls itself Marxist. Maybe it's not true. It's also, I think, whether or not it's a good thing that all this kind of it's all been collapsed into each other, so that everyone just thinks of themselves as, well, I don't know if this is true, but the fact that all these tendencies have all been collapsed into just what socialism is now, whether it's a good or a bad thing, I just don't think it could be any other way.
Wait, can you clarify for me what you mean by that? You don't think what can be any other way?
Oh, I just mean like when it comes to like the trying to disentangle all this morass, all this mess, and be like, these are the right kinds of socialism, this is the wrong kind. Like none of that matters. I don't think it, and I also don't think it can be. We can't go back to the original pure form, the no true Scotsman version of how you find the real Marxist tradition. That's just that's a useless losing battle.
Yes.
Is that? But I don't. Is that what our comrades are doing with their book?
No, I don't think so.
No, yeah, that's no.
I don't mind clarifying like what is what learning from Marx and the history of Marxism leads to as a position. I just don't know how do you make that into something that can gain a critical mass. There's always been this act of translating to the masses. Doesn't mean you dilute the you don't hide. I mean, that's the worst thing that the socialists can do, is to sort of form a kind of liberal progressive platform to the masses and kind of keep their true politics sort of just underneath it. We're seeing that contradiction with a number of DSA candidates as they sort of move from activist to primary winner and so forth. Like there's these two versions of themselves, and they both exist in the same organization, and they're it's like,
I mean, both exist in public.
Yeah, and I mean that's okay. I understand why that happens, but there is a move from like talking amongst ourselves to talking to the general public that involves some kind of populist packaging, that involves something that is not just kind of bound to itself in a kind of Marxist origin. And that doesn't mean you like remove the content, but I just don't see how you build something large without it. And I do see,
neither do I.
I do see, not to be so obsessed with like electoral things, but like the Kshama Sawant campaign failed for a lot of reasons because it didn't have support. But she chose to kind of be uncompromising in some of her messaging, and she got 12%. And after the fact, it's kind of held up as like oh wow, this uncompromising socialist got 12%. But I'm not really sure what that has amounted to.
Yeah, I mean, we've I feel like we have seen periodic little blips like that, at least in my adult life, several times. Like Ty Moore came within a couple of 100 votes of winning in Minneapolis, the Minneapolis City Council. This like long time ago now. So what are we supposed to do with that? Okay, great. We almost won. So
I think in the Kshama Sawant case, it's like, look, this uncompromising revolutionary socialist is capable of some sort of popularity, like mainstream popularity. And that means we don't have to tailor our message to be less. And I mean, I think, sure, right? Like, I guess that's probably partially true, but I just warn against optimism because I don't know how many times I've seen
because
something.
It's cowardice.
Yes. I don't know how many times I've been optimistic about like the Overton window shifting and people being less scared of communists just for everything to be completely turned on its ear within a year or two, and us being back at square one when it came to building some kind of movement. And I think it matters a whole lot less whether or not people are scared of the word socialism or revolutionary socialism than it does that we like organize concretely around like protecting the working class and like advancing its goals.
Well, right. Because
I think that right there is people being less scared of socialism, etc., is a byproduct of organizing and winning. Right?
Yeah, we're getting
and not the other way around.
We're getting it exactly wrong. Because like that's okay. The primary contention that I would want to make on that question is that the masses learn in daily struggle how to like implement their own interests, how to strengthen awareness of their own power, like as a consequence of like solid organization. And so with with the eating comes the appetite. Like that's the reason why Karl Marx said that every step of real movement is worth a dozen programs.
Right.
It's literally the case that like,
yeah,
you can have the perfectly worked out and clarified doctrine point by point and no audience, because who the fuck's listening to that if you're not, out there in the mix or whatever. And
it's often referred to
like,
as Karl Marx's anti-Trotskyite line. Trotskyist, sorry. I don't mean to slur my former comrades.
Yeah, everyone knows that ist is a good thing and ite is a bad thing. And oid is
right.
Even worse than an ite.
An oid?
So yeah, Trotskyoids.
Yeah.
I was told that referring by saying "ite" at the end of anything is anti-Semitic.
Okay.
Oh yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So Hitlerite, that's anti-Semitic.
Yep. There is a conspiracy theory about how Hitler was like a project of like the Zionist cabal that controls everything to be able to get Jews out of Europe and into Palestine.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of Elijah Muhammad's theory about the doctor that invents the white race.
Oh yeah. What's his name? His name is
Forgot.
Fuck. Yaqub. Yeah. But that's like a sort of an Eastern Orthodox right winger kind of theory, like a Russian monarchist theory.
What do those folks make of the Azov Brigade wearing the yarmulke you were talking about?
Well, I'm sure that they think that that's like right along, like, fits in perfectly with their.
It's like evidence.
Yeah, so like I would say like two Russian, like hardcore Russian right wingers that are, essentially they see Putin as a stand-in, as like the regent, the protector of what is obviously the rightful throne of the Romanovs that will one day come back. Those type of right wingers, they absolutely see Ukrainian Nazis and their cozy relationship to, the Ukrainian state, which is run by a Jewish man and several of his like Israeli oligarch friends. They're not all Israeli oligarchs, but like his former chief of staff was, and there are several other people within his cabinet that were like Ukrainian Jews with Israeli citizenship, and anyway, so they 100% do see that like cabal as being one and the same, like the Azov Nazis, the Jews that run Ukraine, quote unquote, and the Israelis as being like all part of the same global conspiracy of like finance capital, which is ultimately controlled by the Jews, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Well, these are people who equate internationalism with what is called globalism, that people like Karl Marx and his ilk have more or less the same worldview as people like Milton Friedman, at least in terms of the abolition national borders or whatever, or at least the hard border.
George Soros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that people on the left do us a disservice by essentially saying the same thing. It's like, well, yeah, actually, yeah, globalism, internationalism is all the same thing.
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
I actually, I would like to contend that in as much as they are the same thing, then internationalism is bad.
Well, if that is
But as an
international,
internationalist, then I'd want to defend internationalism by saying that they're not the same thing.
I mean that kind of internationalism is at odds with, you know, the Palestinian cause, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, that's
Man, I've been doing a lot of reading on the origins of nationalism, and anyway, one of my entire fields of my comprehensive exam is it's my world history field, but my world history professor knows that what I'm studying is Nazism and, you know, derivatives of it in Weimar Germany. So we focused the entire thing on nationalism. So everything that I've been studying for my world history field is about nationalism in the third world and Europe and everywhere else. But anyway, so I've been reading all these different theories of nationalism, and there's so many of these books that talk about how nationalism is now obsolete because of the internationalism of capital and customs unions and stuff like that. And a lot of these books were written in the 90s after the fall of the Soviet Union, and when it looked like, you know, the third way European politics was going to be how the entire world was restructured, and that globalized free trade was just the reality that we're going to have to live with right now. And everyone's like crowing about it. A lot of these books are very much written from the perspective of like liberal academics who are like, oh, well, now the challenge is to see how we can make the world a better, more harmonious and democratic place, in spite of the fact that democracy means less and less and less because decisions of larger countries like adversely impact smaller countries without their say so. You know, and then you know, fast forward 30 years and we're looking at hyper nationalism and like the fragmenting of customs unions and like Brexit, whatever, all of the different revolts against this globalization coming to the forefront of left and right movements.
Well, yeah, on the subject of sublating rather than abolishing, there is this reemergent left nationalism. I don't know what they're called now, but there's the breakaway out of Die Linke in Germany. That's Sarah Wagenknecht's party.
Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, I think, is what it's called.
Well, that's going to go very well. So there are salient differences across the left, and we talk about that all the time. But strangely, the thing which kind of unites a whole bunch of them is this, I think, I'm just going to call it somewhat incorrect view of the nation. And we've talked about that a lot too, but like, I think there's a reason why, and it's a very good reason why. It's very understandable that there's this left nationalism / left populism, which is like on the rise in all kinds of places, like the global south, but also in the global north, like in Europe. I think that there have been very few victories, but on that side, but there are very few victories anyways.
Spain. I don't know if that's a left government, but
yeah, and if it is, I don't know if that counts as a victory.
Well, it's a victory to the extent that Sanchez has refuted and resisted aiding and abetting the U.S. and Israel.
Speaking of which, did you see that the Chinese released information saying that they concluded that Israel was behind the Moroccans releasing migrants into Ceuta?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what China says. And
I heard that. Yeah.
Even if it's not true, it definitely confirmed the suspicions of literally everyone. You know.
I mean, it's so obvious. Like, it would take some convincing that it was not Israel for me.
Yeah. I've seen elsewhere that likely it was Morocco, Israel, and the United States. Morocco's mad at Spain for cozying up to Algeria, so they were like totally willing to go along with the United States and Israel to help destabilize the Spanish government, who was made to look foolish for their pro-immigrant rhetoric that they've been deploying recently.
Right. And also they can sort of hide this behind the kind of anti-colonial, why is the Spanish still occupying this stretch of land? Meanwhile, Morocco is like
occupying the Western Sahara.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, there's a fair point that they have about Spain still occupying Ceuta, but like as well, Morocco occupying Western Sahara. It's interesting in all of my readings about nationalism too. One of the ones that I found is about how Basque nationalism was regressive, because it's like trying to basically add socialist trappings on top of an exclusionary ideology.
Yeah, so like I find that to be that's absurd. But there is this, what we call the left has been largely, it is the left in the sense of it being kind of the radical edge of the left of liberalism.
Right. Yeah, which is, I mean, there's always a tension between these sort of internationalist hopes and values of socialism and communism and issues of sovereignty and self-determination. It's sort of like the problem of trying to build a new world on top of the old. But now we're in this, like you mentioned, the left has become so absorbed into the sort of neoliberal order that the resistors are the groups that are not leftist in orientation. And a lot of the readings we did are kind of showing how socialism and its nationalist variants, not National Socialism, but these different iterations of European socialisms that are kind of in between, not Soviet aligned, but not fascist. It's not that they aren't the folk-socialisms is one way they put it.
Yeah,
they're not Well, they're not. It's neither here nor there as far as like the way we think of left and right. It's back, and I was interested to see in the Sublation article that he goes pretty in depth into an article we read together by Kolakowski, which contends that left and right are relative terms for the most part.
Oh yeah. I thought that was this article is called "The Left and Its Meaning."
Yeah,
I think that's a very, very. This is a very interesting discourse. I think this is really good,
and I think that could be applied to this sort of like sovereigntist resistance in Europe. However much it's framed as like a far right movement, it's much more messy and hard to define.
Yeah, I think that's just the case with everything. Like that which I think is of interest and is inspiring in the Narodny socialismus, which is different than the Nationalist socialismus, which is different than the folk-socialism, which has a right and a left. Like all of this stuff is super interesting and this is a very useful, I think, intellectual exercise. But I just think it gets so collapsed and it gets so we paper over all distinctions to the point of being making these distinctions uninteresting and knowing about them is just of no value.
So like in German, folk has a sort of a racial connotation, like ethnic more than racial, right? Like German speaking, and folk, it's a spiritually, linguistically, ethnically German. And the East Germans use the word folk to mean people, right?
Yeah.
Like,
the people of the land.
Right. And they sort of tried to denude it of its like connotations that led its folkish connotations, right? And so that's a complicated word in German, if you're honest, right? And then in Czech, they have two different words for people. One is národ, and the other is like national, national. And Narod is like the soft nationalism. And the nacional is the hard nationalism. So like they would refer to like the National Socialist Party of Czechoslovakia uses narod, and the National Socialist Party of Germany uses national, the national derivative. So those are two different things, and they're very, very different things, but they're both translate to English, which is a language that really insists upon a lack of nuance in
Yeah.
It looks the same on paper, sounds the same. So like, you know, you even have people saying, "Oh yeah, the Nazis got their idea for National Socialism from the Czech National Socialist Party." I've seen an author say that before. I'm like, yeah, dog, that's not true.
I mean, that's why we think of that's why we have this concept of popular socialism, populist. We talk about the Russian populists, whereas they themselves were the narodniks, the narodniki, because they were more Volkish, but not in the way that that means in German, at least not the way that it means in German for 1930s rightists.
Right.
So again, it's like everything's just much more complicated, much more interesting than we tend to present it as. But I do want to talk about folk-socialism, because Ben, I knew that you thought that was a very interesting article.
Oh yeah, I mean it's actually an historical paper from 1937.
Yeah.
Richard.
That's actually the one that I was talking about, Jason. Remember, I said, "Oh, I've got an article about that. I could send you." It's just
it was this one.
PDF of that publication, of the American publication of that from like the 1930s.
Well, I'm glad we finally got around to reading it.
Yeah.
It really sort of, I mean, one could mistakenly see it as purely about Germany in the late 30s, but it's actually pertaining to a whole host of movements in Europe and different ideas about how to advance a socialist politics. Many groups, many different people from social democracy to sort of the socialist right are, and even within the Nazi party, the Strasserites, right, are like adapting the class struggle to a kind of national proletarianization. And yeah, they're just kind of like adapting these categories.
Yeah.
From class to nation, and also like basically making an adept point that the working class in these European countries doesn't have enough power to achieve its ends alone.
Well, yeah, and that's not exactly that's a situation which is more or less where we are right now. It's an unchanged situation. I do like that that he spends a lot more time talking about Strasser than about Hitler. He talks about the more the idea of Strasser as like as a substitute or as a fix, and how that's, you know, it's not true. I think we tend to really misunderstand the Strasser milieu, Strasser, what he stood for.
Well, I think that this guy, he gets it a lot better than most people that I've read. Most people just assume that Strasser was like Hitler, except for more socialister, you know?
Yeah.
Well, he's also writing, he's contemporaneous to Strasser.
Right. And one of the biggest flaws in Strasser's thinking I've seen is he wants the existence of like a socialist Germany alongside a fascist Italy and a, you know, capitalist France and whatever else in a European like defensive union, like sort of all coexisting, because every nation needs to have their own sort of national spirit and trajectory fulfilled on their own. And thus each one can do their own thing, and it has to be okay with its neighbors, instead of seeing that the existence of a corporatist, quote, German socialist state would be unthinkable. It would not be allowed to exist by the capitalist nations. Any kind of state that was trying to organize its economy on behalf of like the citizens within it, rather than the businesses that are supposed to be running it, right? They could never be allowed to exist.
Unless, of course, it worked out a deal to betray the other major power in the world by allying with the major imperialist capitalist country, and then let that country flood its nation state with all kinds of factories where they could pay dirt cheap labor for 30 or 40 years, and in the meantime build up its infrastructure and prowess to become a pure contender.
Well, so like Strasser's idea about socialism too was a socialism of small producers, right? Like everybody, he wanted to deproletarianize the Germans, move back to workshop production and farmers holding their own plots and stuff like that. So the idea of industrializing was anathema to them, because that was antithetical to the soul of the misty sort of spiritualism of the Germanic soul.
Yeah, that's why Oswald Spengler said that Marxism was the capitalism of socialism.
Right.
No China for you, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, and like I think that in the past, we've done ourselves a disservice by saying we know better. The small producer or conception of the past is just, it's over, so we have to move on. I think when we, like I said, like we've already said a bunch of times, but when we've been at our best, we've found a way to mark ourselves out as distinct, but say, well, we're all on the same side here. So that's why we can have Bolsheviks and SRs, at least for a time. Makes you wonder what the Socialist Party of America might have been if they had had a similar kind of alliance with the populist movement.
Right.
But I don't know. This is very academic, not exactly super important for today.
Well, actually, I was thinking earlier when I was seemingly throwing shade on Kasama Shawant, I don't think that that's a waste if that campaigning can be held on to, the power that is built in the community can be kept. I don't think defeats in elections matter if that is true. And that the reason I think of that is you were just alluding to the period of Debs. And that is something that Debs was doing when he ran. He was still in relation to actually existing politics in the working class and in a party apparatus in a revolutionary epoch. So
yeah, that's true. I think that he wasn't, and I guess maybe we shouldn't, or I know we shouldn't think of electoral victories as the be-all end-all of everything. Like they are important in a republic, but also in a very in the kind of republic that we live in, or even a much better one, like even in Europe. Like that only goes so far. When you're playing by the enemy's rules, then you're probably going to lose a lot.
Just how do you maintain that organizing project without winning elections?
Yeah,
that's a question I have for her movement.
I mean, that's a question that I think we all have. I don't think we have any idea. So one thing I think that we all should just recognize is that we have lots of questions. We don't really have very many answers to anything. Like even just like, we talk about being, leftist. I try to not, but it's just that's just part of the norm. That's just what happens. But we talk about our movements and our politics in terms of being the left. But I've become convinced at this point that that's not a super useful way to think about it or to talk about things broadly or even just amongst ourselves. I don't really know what to do instead.
Well, this gets to the questions and positions in all of these papers we've read about, arguing for or against, or orienting towards a populist framework. I mean, I'm very sympathetic to that. I see it as somewhat of a necessity that the left cannot win as it needs to by trying to reproduce itself over and over again. There has to be some kind of larger coalition outside of itself, which is pretty common sense when you think about how few of us there are. And that has actually always been the project when trying to build a socialist politics, is to win over ordinary people who aren't even politicized, hence are not of
right,
the
to
left.
sort of move from sort of a quantity to a quality,
Yeah,
you might say.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not like I mean, it's a difficult thing, but you get people on your side by putting forth real issues that are affecting them now, that are pressing them now, and obviously that society is not in the left's image, right? It's in the image of
right.
It's closer to the right, actually, writ large.
Much more. And it is the case that, like, if we can say that the masses do learn in daily struggle how to implement their own interests, and if we can say that we have where we can be roughly we can presume they will strengthen their own awareness of their own power through solid organization, then I think we could also say that it's not too much of a leap to presume that they will also be more likely to join into more revolutionary activities on a broader scale. Like when that sort of thing becomes an actuality, a possibility, as opposed to just our own fantasy that even we can't agree on precisely what it should be. Like if we're still arguing about what the right way to do it is, why the hell would anybody who's struggling care? So yeah, I agree.
So I sort of think that like populism is a phase of the movement, right? Wherein like socialists can like work to clarify their goals and win like broader swaths of the population over to actual socialist demands. I definitely don't think that populism, like a populist sort of a left populism, should be the end goal. Like a class collaborationist sort of unification around issues is definitely not an end goal by any means whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
Right. But neither do I eschew it completely. Right. And I think that like for Americans, we should be so fucking lucky to be worrying about whether or not our victorious left populist movement is socialist enough, instead of which blood drinking fucking pedophile ghouls are going to be in charge of us and take our tax dollars to give to Israel, and while simultaneously like eviscerating what's left of our social safety net and doing nothing about rising gas and food prices. I would
yeah, but things have to get worse before they get better, though, Chris. Like just eventually everything will suck so badly that everyone will just snap to the right way to do things, like all at once.
So ridiculous. There's so much magical thinking you hear from everyone, really. There is a truism. I mean, there is a truth in that, I would say, misguided truism. Yes, it's, my tenants begin to talk to one another, and their grievances and complaints develop into something approaching organizing. The worse their living situation gets. and so on. But I think there's way too much magical thinking on the left, including the Marxist left, including the most adept and well-equipped thinkers, or at least the people we hear from. It's in the abolition discourse. We've talked about that before. There's kind of a leap. There are many things I totally agree with, and yet I can't stop from listening to this discourse from the vantage point of an ordinary person who's just trying to secure their existence. And there's a lot of things that cannot be explained with theory. So all of it's messy. I'm not saying it can be any other way. I'm just saying it has to be momentum, and we can wrestle with these contradictions forever, but we can't do that before we achieve momentum.
Yeah,
it all has to happen at the same time. And the truth is, all of these divisions that people are contending with, we all have to kind of be building that together, even though we're on opposite sides of issues.
Yeah, that's why I agree with Daniel Tutt and Varn and their characterization of left populism as a. Well, I don't know if I would agree entirely. What I will say is I think that they're pointing to the Debs era Socialist Party as it's a much more workable, much more useful thing for us.
I would agree. And the economy was entirely different.
It was. And also there was a populist moment that party existed within and afterward, of course. But it was like what Chris said, is that the populism as a phase, I think it's a good way to put it. Populism as a necessary phase, and is the milieu in which class struggle politics can be articulated in more concise, more defined terms. And also, I think maybe this is important for anybody listening. Just this discussion is not what do we think of Varn and Tutt's book? It's much more than that. And again, I actually do really think that their book is really good. It's good that it happens. But I also think it's really obvious from this discussion that we're not coming from the same place at all.
Right. For me, I would very much say that if we are looking for a party to emulate or a movement to emulate, Debs' Socialist Party, sure. Yeah, that's our goal, right? Eventually, once we figure out how to adapt that to the current political topography that we currently find ourselves in. I think that's awesome. And I do think that left populism as a substitute for socialist class politics is an incorrect formation. We don't need to abandon class politics for left populism. I think that's wrong. I think that's a wrong idea. McCloughan move and the all of the first round of post-leftists before post-left meant something else that it didn't mean back then. They tried to disavow, try to find a subject that wasn't the working class, or the idea that the working class was too bought off to be the subject, like the Maoist third worldist camps. All of these disavowals Kevin. But Kevin doesn't think that.
I know.
Don't misrepresent.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But all of the iterations of sort of anti-working class, not anti-working class, but all the iterations of trying to disavow the working class as the revolutionary subject in all of its different forms, from anarchism to whatever else. I find those to be all incorrect, and so do I find this newest, most popular incarnation of it, which would be the idea that we have to our horizon is a left populist coalition taking power and sort of softening the blows of capitalism. I don't think that is an end goal. I don't think that's our utopian horizon. I do think
I would say that's part of our horizon.
I do think it could be a a milieu within which we as socialists who are absolutely absolutely still hold a class analysis and still believe in like a working class control of the means of productions, of productions, plural, right? The working class control, that is something for us to work within, right? But I also think that any kind of popular movement in the United States that tells regular Americans off the bat, no, you can't own your own mom and pop shop. It's going to be taken over by the state. Yeah. You're never going to win those people. You're never going to win Americans to your side, because the highest goal of any American is this utter fantasy of being your own boss and owning your own business. Most people can't do it, and when they do, it only lasts for a year or two, and then they end up going like subsumed into some corporation. But that's their goal,
or they die in debt.
Yeah, exactly. So like if that was going to be, if we really needed to disabuse every single person who might be sympathetic to our movement of like, no, you can't own your mom and pop shop, no, you can't work your little farm or whatever, even if it was part of a co-op. I just think that there are ways populist ways to appeal to allied classes that could be subordinate to the goals of like the cooperative commonwealth,
I would even go as far as to say it's not important that those sectors of society would ever accept their fate as being part of the proletarianization of everyone.
Right.
Like, if there's one way in which I maybe am much more of an idealist, much less of a materialist, at least in the way that those terms are used within circles of socialists which call themselves Marxists, I'm whatever. I'm fine with that. Like, I'm an idealist in the way that like Thomas Masaryk was an idealist in the sense that like there are commanding heights of industry, but then there's all the non-commanding heights of the sectors of the economy which are not necessary to nationalize and collectivize. And
as much as people want to have their own little small business within the non-commanding heights of the economy, I don't care about that. I think that's fine.
I don't care at all. I actually think that's great.
Yeah.
And that's a very...
Call me Fidel Castro, but I think that's fine.
I'm pro used bookstore.
Yeah, this Jeffersonian ideal of the small proprietor republic. I don't need to beat that out of the consciousness of the population of my country. In fact, I even kind of agree with it.
Before anyone comes for me, yes, I know some people operate small businesses successfully and stay open their whole lives. And yeah, that's obviously something that some people do. I just mean as like a goal that every single American has, that is obviously not going to work out for every one of us. Sorry.
And for those others of you who like me have experience in being under the tyrannical sway of those small business owners who treat you
the
like
iron boot of the petty bourgeoisie, dude.
We're not defending that either.
No.
Well, and when it comes to like telecommunications and weapons manufacturing and whatever,
I think those should be small businesses only.
Yeah, they should only be small businesses. Big nationwide conglomerates, collectives for like hamburgers, and then every individual proprietor makes their own kind of missile.
Right.
Whoa.
Big Steve's Missile Company. Hey, that's sort of the way that Ukraine produces drones, right?
It is. Yeah.
They have like decentralized workshops, and they put together like, a dizzying different number of drones to the point where the Ukrainian soldiers complain about how they never really know what the capabilities of any one of their drones is going to be. Except for like the big shipments they get in from like Europe and the United States, like they've been using for their middle strike campaign and to blow up refineries and stuff. Those are all like Western weapons provided to them. But I mean like the little FPV drones that they get from China and like duct tape a hand grenade onto or whatever.
Well, yeah, Chris, it's innovation.
Yeah, I was just reading an article at work of the Rolling Stone about this particular case study of this far fringe leftist who is using 3D printing to print automatic weapons, and he's in Appalachia, and it's this whole unregulated area of the economy. All but I think 7 states are have not banned it or even addressed it. I wonder if there's any overlap there with drones in the future.
Probably.
I saw an ad online recently that was like, it showed a video of a drone flying into the upper story of an apartment building and then blowing up and like collapsing the side of the building. And it says, drones can be anywhere. And then it was like an anti-drone. Yeah. And this guy just put it on his backpack on the side, and it like an alarm goes off, and then you pick it up, and then it'll show you what the drone's view is. So to protect yourself from drones. I saw that ad popped up on my Facebook. It was an ad for an anti-drone sort of device that you can wear on yourself and like move around. But the ad was like obviously footage from the Ukraine war where a drone was used to blow up collapse the side of an apartment building that had Russian or Ukrainian soldiers in it.
So they're selling that to Ukrainian civilians?
I think they're selling it to American consumers.
Okay.
Yeah, using because if you're using Russian or Ukrainian drones, those are like using Starlink or Razvets or whatever, and it's highly encrypted. You're not going to be able to just tap into their feed and see where it's going. But like a commercial drone that somebody's using to spy on your house or whatever, or that the cops are using or whatever, you can use that to find that out.
Oh my God. I hate this so much.
Yeah, the world just keeps getting worse in ways that I could not have conceived of it.
In 10 years from now, there will be people saying, remember the good old days, the 2020s? Back whenever you could tell that there was AI because it wasn't so good yet. That's very bleak.
Or the 90s.
It's true, though.
The 90s are considered the peak of our civilization now.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it makes sense. Like, because the 90s we had won the Cold War. We had beaten the big
existential threat to American way of life, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We still made movies which were watchable.
Yeah, dude. Even blockbusters were like Francis Ford Coppola movies and stuff, and not like Marvel slop.
In a lot of ways, that was the crest. That was the peak, right before when you look at it like a pyramid. That was the 90s. Was this pinnacle? And then everything since then, basically, a liberal society without a conscious opposition to compete with has to compete with itself, and so that's what we've been doing since then. I guess that's kind of a segue into the question of, we've said this before. We've talked about like the pink tide and in the sort of the high marks of Vesuve and Mas, and was that just a moment in history? Is the task today just like a reinvigoration of the socialism of the 20th century? It's a very leading question, because I obviously think the answer is no. I think that because we can't imagine how awful the world is, and how awful it's going to become, I think that means that the socialism of the 21st century, if there's a chance for one, it's going to have to be based upon the realities of the material conditions of the world right now.
Yeah.
And the world right now is in no way as optimal for at least a version or whatever, our preferred version of the socialism of the 19th and 20th centuries. I think that's just that's fantasy is what it is.
Well, and I still think, and I know people have cut against this idea, that the biggest impediment to progress in the world at this point, and I think the pink tide is a perfect example of this, it's not that they had the incorrect ideologies or incorrect formations upon which they structured their governments or whatever, it's absolutely the United States of America. And infiltrating and embargoing and sanctioning and using the CIA to disrupt, and all of these governments and all of these movements in Latin America, up to the point where just recently they kidnapped the floundering president of Venezuela, whose country they ruined through embargoes and sanctions, and are probably about to do the same thing in Cuba. So I still think primary contradiction is U.S. imperialism,
and it's so much.
Yeah.
It's so much greater than just the Western Hemisphere. I mean, the United States has literally endangered the global economy,
right?
Which affects other great powers, and yeah. I mean, we're kind of headed over a cliff in a very real sense.
Well, right, yeah. So, like, if that's true, and I think it is, then the opposition to U.S. imperial power and projection is going to largely be nationalist. So it may as well be left-nationalist or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
And
I mean, we don't have to... Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and we as Americans, like, our goal is not to, like, insist that these left nationalist movements are correct and the proper form of organizing society, or even if they're not left nationalist movements, even if they're just nationalist movements that are fighting against American imperialism, like in Iran or, Lebanon or whatever. We don't need to, like, agree with them to realize that they're playing a world historic role. And what our goal is to impede and oppose American imperialism as the only ones who can. I mean, I guess I don't know how much we actually can, but because we live in a constitutional republic, we're supposed to be able to,
Well, right.
And as much as anyone will fucking listen to us.
I mean, all of these.
Well, right, and as much as any utilization of those tools at our disposal in the form of the constitutional republic, and as much as that opposition can be organized and mounted, it will at least in large part be populist. So I would say it would be better if it was left populist or whatever. You know?
I mean, as all these ascendant leftist electoral campaigns and electeds that have, in Michigan of late and Mamdani and even AOC are effectively advancing a left nationalist platform by saying defund the world police, fund schools, fund hospitals, bring the resources home to Americans. I mean, because that makes sense.
I don't think AOC is saying to defund the military, though.
Well, honestly, I think that AOC gets way too much credit, way more than she deserves.
You mean AOCIA?
Yes. Yeah. Although I do think that, Ben, your larger point is correct. I just
me too. I was just
removing AOC.
Yeah.
I think I think these new.
I was heading off some unnecessary fucking comments on our post.
I think these insurgent campaigns are making her look over her shoulder and like.
Oh, absolutely.
Catch up.
Well, good, yeah. And look. Do I think that this populist moment, which is beginning again, finally, is good enough? No. But is it like a start? And is that something to be happy about, to be celebrated? Yeah, I think so. I think I'm very tired of being I guess I don't want to be selling the newspaper on the street corner to the radicalizing minority and whatever. Like this thing that I'm so pessimistic about, I'm so much more than I even know how to say. I don't want that to ever come back. Whatever is going to come, it's going to come as a result of this inadequate moment that's happening right now. And yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think
Yeah,
I'm happy about that.
we find our way to act within the inadequate moment that is slightly more adequate than the moment in which we were banging our heads against the wall previously, right?
Right.
With all due credit, though, I think we are standing on the shoulders of your past selves and those people that were bridging that fallow moment to this one.
Well, yeah.
Many
If I was
inadequacies. A chain
if I
of
was to
inadequacies.
completely eschew, no, what's a good way to put this? It is true, Ben, that I am constantly revisiting and criticizing my past self, who was a coward, because I'm dialectical, you know?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going to
I
end
don't
on?
know.
We should end on you saying that you're constantly revisiting and
End on the
your
word
past self
coward.
because-
You get to end on the
yeah,
word
end on the word coward. Yeah.
I did have something that I forgot I was going to say in response to the need to form coalition under the auspices of left populism or even just populism. I think so long as that can be done, I don't think anything should impede the ability to advance working class economic struggle, including leftist ideology. I don't think that should be like the deal that can't be brokered. Like we should find every available means to ally and build coalition with the American working class in all its variety. And that's really just what I'm advocating with regard to populism. And I think the Overton window is shifting to the point where people are not allergic to socialism because the vast ocean of precarity is expanding exponentially and people don't care anymore. You know, people don't care so much about, at least in certain areas, what that means. The real question is, when will they not care about socialism in Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas? When will that cease to be an issue? That will be like a true Overton window change.
Рабочие и крестьяне не смогут прожить без нас. Без нас некому будет установить порядок, определить работу, принудить к труду. Без нас все развалится и государство распадется.